And so walking in, it was just immediate, like, you are labor.
Yeah.
And so I got used very quickly, especially because I was a bigger guy,
Yeah.
for so much labor.
So you come in here, and within the first 30 days, you all you remember is like labor, 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 labor,
And being drugged.
and being drugged. Yeah. Kevin,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. What do you enjoy doing in your spare time when you're not plagued by trauma from Mark and Leslie?
Well, I've got 3 dogs, and so I take care of them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Go on runs with them. And then I'm a nerd, so I read video
Mm-hmm.
games, tabletop games. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm a nerd through and through. So you name it,
Yeah,
I'm probably a part of it. I've got Star Wars tattoos.
absolutely. I did notice that one. I really like it. People may recognize your name from some of my past videos where you have given me some of your information,
Mhm.
some things that you noticed, and some of your story. So you have been sharing your story in some ways, but this is the first time you're doing it on camera.
I know, and unlike the pictures, I actually have a beard in this
Yeah. Well, you're a
one.
little older now.
Yeah, I'm not at 15, 16 anymore.
Right. How old are you now?
26.
Okay.
So it's been 10 years since I was like there.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I think for me, it's been about 14 since I left. Um, and it still can haunt you 10 years later. You
Hmm.
know, it's wild.
I mean, I remember even just years ago, like seeing them out in public, like
Yes.
driving through J.C. Penney's, and like
Yeah.
you've got to go slow because there's all those crosswalks, and watching them go across a crosswalk and just instant fear.
Yeah. Obviously, you were with Mark and Leslie for a time in your youth. How did you meet Mark and Leslie?
So it has to get like a little bit into my personal life. Growing up as a kid, I've always been a very logical thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hated growing up being told because I said so. Like why is this happening to my autonomy? Because I said so. So I'd argue about it a lot.
Well, you deserve a reasonable explanation. You're still a little
Yeah,
human.
trying to figure out life and figure out why things must be done a certain way. For my brain to process it, I've got to know why. I didn't get that as a lot. And then I also had like a very toxic. My family's always been involved in church. We had a very toxic youth pastor who
Mm.
was telling lies to my parents. They've since like realized that and been like, "Oh, we're so sorry. He was actually a terrible
Oh.
person."
Oh.
But that contributed to part of my mom feeling like I was this out of control, wild kid.
Wow.
And so I always joke that the thing that sent me to the cult is that I read a book in math class.
Oh,
It,
wow.
it was the final straw. I was reading a book in math class. A student, I'd already marked up my homework. The one question I had incorrect, corrected in red. So I was reading my book. Math teacher didn't like it. She was like, "You can either put your book up or go to the office." And so I said, "I'll go to the office." When I got up there, the vice principal took the book. I was a kid. I called him a bully. That was just all that I knew. And so I got in a lot of trouble for that. Because of that, my mom felt like I was out of control.
Wow.
And so she was at this point where she was like, "I don't know what to do with you. So I've got to look for outside help."
Yeah, and I think that is maybe a common thing that brings these kids here is parents not really feeling equipped,
Mm-hmm.
like there's something better out there than what they have to offer. Whereas maybe now there might be a little bit more acceptance of we go to family therapy.
Well, and they had tried therapy with me before, but it was always like a religious therapy. It wasn't something I wanted. So, especially whenever I'm sitting there and I'm not talking, and the therapist is like, "Has to pay either way." And like hearing that, it's a very unhealthy
Right,
relationship with your therapist if they're
right.
like, "I don't care if you talk or not, your mom's going to pay me." And so it didn't work for me. Thankfully, now I've got a good one. Student, I get the free
Good,
counseling there, and I've got a great one there.
good. So you're all very a person who questions things and just wants to know.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a bad thing. There's ways to foster that growth in kids,
Mm-hmm.
and help them become something with
Yeah.
their
And,
curiosities.
and I love working with kids. Like right now, while I'm going to school, I'm working part time at a daycare, and all the other like employees or stuff, they're like, "You have such patience with these kids." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"They're just kids."
They are.
And I
They're just
remember
kids.
remember back to like my childhood, and like I just wanted to know why.
Yes.
And so when they ask me, I tell them why. It's not
Yeah.
just because I said so. I
Right.
try to explain it to them.
Right. And I bet you have a better relationship because of that.
I do. A lot of the kids love me, and then the other teachers are like, "How do you have such good patience?" I'm like,
Are you ever like,
"We
I was in a cult?
it, no,
That's
no,
what I do.
haven't said that one yet." But a lot of times I'm like, you have to enter their world because all they know, like if a kid falls, scrapes their knee, they know they hurt,
Yeah.
don't know why. They're looking to you for comfort. You need to be that comfort.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is that you're giving them. If you're just laughing and being silly with them, sometimes that's all they need.
Yes. You'd be a good counselor too. You can join us one day.
I've also heard that. Someone else
Yeah.
was telling me, they're like, actually, it was my therapist because I was telling him
Yeah.
like what I want to do as a teacher. And he's like, are you sure you don't want to be a
Yeah.
therapist?
Okay, so your parents started feeling like because you were stubborn and maybe pushing the system that you had become this uncontrollable child.
Yeah.
And so they needed to reach to outside sources.
Yeah. And so I remember like years later, me and my mom talked about it. And she was like, I was looking at like military schools and different stuff.
Mhm.
And just all of a sudden, she's like, I was just praying real hard about it. And then all of a sudden, Mark and Leslie show up. And I don't know if it was like they had come because my parents owned a business in town. So I don't know if they had like come in with like their little donation jars that they would do back then. And I don't know if it was that or something that kind of tipped her off, but that's where she started leaning. And so I remember we, after very briefly telling me about it, we went out to dinner at the like ranch. And so everyone was dressed, you know, as nice as they could. You know, they're putting on a show.
Oh, yeah, because once you live with them, you know that when people come over, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah. So everyone's on their best behavior. They're all, you know, dressed as nice as they can, you know, what they have, because being honest, they don't have a whole lot.
No.
But they just put on this show and try to invite them in. And so a lot of it was with my family being so religious, this is kind of what they're looking for.
Well, and your family owned a business, so
yeah.
they probably thought they had money.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was definitely like Mark and Leslie's reason for kind of attracting me. And one thing that I have never forgotten is one day Mark sat me down and he was like, God told me to never tell you no. And looking back at that, I'm like,
What?
He didn't want to say no to me because he didn't want to create like adversity with my family.
Wow.
So that's why a lot of kids were told like, you can't go see your parents this weekend. I
Yeah.
was never told that.
Okay.
I was never told that I couldn't go on a debate trip. I was always allowed to go, no matter what. And a lot of times I'd ask like, well, since I'm going on this trip this weekend, can I go spend Sunday with my parents? And every time it was yes. And so I was getting these long breaks that these other kids aren't getting because I leave on Friday for this debate tournament and I don't come back till Sunday night.
Yeah.
So I'm gone the entire weekend.
And that's another thing that I think is so toxic about them is that they do treat people differently. And that's weird. If they're really sticking to what they're saying they're preaching, or there's some deep reason why they won't let people see their parents, they're trying to break their rebellion or whatever, but then it's different for each person, that's suspicious. So you were able to go and do some things to get away. What was it like when you first actually started living there and being more of a part of this?
So whenever I first moved in, it was before Cook's Cabin, the little boys' dorm, had been finished.
Okay.
So they had like all of the outside up. They were still doing some work on the inside, and they hadn't made any of the bunk beds. So all the boys are still living in the main house in like the back furthest corner you can get. And it's 2 bunk beds and a regular bed. I don't remember who all was in there, but I remember like those bunks being full. And then like Sean was sleeping out in the den.
He said he was
on
sleeping
the couch,
like
on the pull-out
couch. Yeah.
And so I just remember it being extremely cramped. And you're already shoved in such a small space. So it's like, what do you even do with your clothes? Like,
right.
You're just living out of whatever you can.
And we were really encouraged not to have many possessions, and
we
didn't have room
didn't
for
get
it.
to take a lot with me as it was,
No.
just clothes. I'm pretty sure it's all I got.
Okay, so you started living there. It's really cramped. The boys are living there. They're building this extra tiny home off labor from kids, right? And so what happened as you started getting settled? What did you think at first?
It was weird because I knew Molly. They're middle of like the oldest 3 because we were in the same grade. I'd seen her all throughout school, never knew anything about her or what her family was like, but it was like that was like a familiar face for me. And so I think they kind of used her as like, he's in the same grade as you need to help draw him in. And then once I get moved in, then they start using another boy there to kind of draw me in. And so he had things that other guys didn't have. So I remember there was one night, it was just me and him, and we were sitting up late. He's like, hey man, can you keep a secret? I was like, sure. And he whips out like a DS.
Oh.
He's like, I have 2 DSs and I have Pokemon on both of them. Do you want to battle? And so like we sat up late that night and like played Pokemon.
Things that normal teens should be able to do.
Right. And I remember thinking back on it now, like it is so weird that he had as I moved in, he just has two. No one else has these. He has games that are compatible with each other, like the same copies. And then after I was there for a little bit, I never saw him again. I don't know what ever happened to him. I don't know if they were his. I don't know if it was like one of those things where it was like, we need to make him comfortable. That's very much what it reads looking back on it is they knew that I was a gamer coming in because my parents tell them everything about me. So they know that like, this is my comfort. It's kind of like they draw me in with that.
That's strange.
It is. I remember one of my first weekends there. I hadn't been there very long at all. We're working on the boys' dorm, and they're like, we need someone to go out there and pickaxe the ground so that we can run PVC pipe for the washer and shower to drain out. Because that ground up there is raw, not dirt. It is raw.
Yeah, they lived in a very lots of shale, loose ground, but not nourished ground.
It's the one place in Russellville I know of that actually has scorpions. Like I remember seeing them up there. And I'm like, what are those doing here? But back then, I mean, I was a big guy, especially like younger. I've always been a bigger person. They're like, well, he's a big guy. Let's send him. And so I remember going out there alone while everyone else was in there eating and just pickaxing the ground. And I was out there for, I think, probably an hour before someone came to check on me. And that's just all I did. They just said, from here to here, start going at it.
Yeah.
And so that was one of my first like projects of many, many construction projects that they would use just straight up child labor for.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so you notice that there are some things that are maybe a little odd, especially in retrospect, and then you pretty much immediately get put to work, of course, to help develop their land, their progress, things that they are going to sell and make money off of. Yeah. And whenever you started the day-to-day, like going to Bible studies and all of that, what was that like for you?
It was different, but I won't say it was like, because I had been like, I had grown up in this religious setting. It wasn't super weird to go to Bible study where some people had come in and they had never heard about Jesus. I had grown up going to church every single week. I went Wednesday nights, had youth. So it was different. It definitely seemed like more intense. But as like a student, I've always loved learning. That's what pushed me kind of in that career of being an educator is I think that's one of the positions where you can always learn.
Yeah.
It was kind of exciting because I was like, well, I get to learn a little bit more. And growing up in that setting, at first, it's like, well, this is something my family knows all about this. I can grow up and I can be smart and learn about all this stuff that they say that they love and drives them from day to day.
Well, and a lot of kids, when we're teenagers, also have this, and I was talking to Mackenzie about this, it's an idea that another home is going to be better than ours. It's kind of exciting. We're living somewhere else outside of your own home. So it's kind of adventurous. It's kind of exciting. It's new. It's especially at first, it seems very picturesque family.
Yeah.
And so a part of that is very drawing. A part of that is very interesting for a teenager.
And it was a lot about escaping the tensions back home.
Yeah.
Especially with like the youth pastor who had been spreading these lies and lying to my parents while they were on vacation about like what I was doing and all this stuff. It had caused so much tension between me, my parents, my brother-in-law. I mean, all of us. At one point, I didn't have a laundry hamper, TV, a door. I mean, anything that I might find enjoyable got taken.
Is that at Adullam or at home?
At home.
Okay.
Because of that youth pastor's lies.
Yeah.
Like all of that happened. And so it was kind of like getting a break from all of that.
Okay.
And so it was a different change of pace, but it was better than what I had been experiencing.
That makes sense. And I think that's also true for a lot of people, that there were certain problems in some of our homes. And so it did feel like we were getting a relief from those problems at the beginning.
Yeah.
So what were some things that started to come up for you that made you question what is really going on here?
I think one of the earliest events was I was having trouble sleeping. And so the same guy that had, kind of brought me in and like showed me the DSs and everything, he was also like their student medical guru. So he always talked about like wanting to go to medical school. Nothing wrong with that. But unlike all the other kids, he had like loads of meds and just like Tylenol, ibuprofen, and melatonin. So one night, we're talking about I can't sleep. He gives me melatonin. He gave me like 300 milligrams or something. It was an absurd amount.
Oh my God.
It was an absurd amount. So I slept all through Bible study, all through that morning, and Glenn had come down because they were working on the dorms. At the time, they're building the bunk beds. And I wake up to Glenn standing over me with a tape measure, and all I've heard is these horrible, horrible stories about him. I've watched videos of him kicking students, chasing students with chainsaws. And I wake up and this man is like looking down at me with a tape measure over my head, and immediately just red flags. Like I'm just, alarms are blaring. I'm terrified. And so that's when I'm like, what's going on? Just doing construction stuff. But I kind of start watching like that day, like why is he so scary? And I don't know. That was just like my tip off.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had been shown those videos as a sort of threat. This guy is someone we work with.
It was an intimidation tactic.
Yeah.
And it was from one of the other guys that was allowed to have a phone. Again, it's that special treatment. And I remember watching those videos and like everyone's laughing about it. And I'm just like, why are we laughing that he is kicking a student down a hill or chasing a student with a live active chainsaw? Like, it's not like, oh, it doesn't have the blades on. Like, he'd just been using it to cut stuff.
Well, Mark kind of liked that sort of torment,
Yeah.
I guess I would call it. So given a ton of freaking melatonin.
Yes.
And so you slept. Did they get onto you for being so sleepy or anything?
It kind of was like, it wasn't like formal discipline, but they were like, this can't happen again.
Okay.
They're like, we're gonna let it slide this one time.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen again.
We're not really worried about you. We just don't want you doing that.
No, they weren't worried about me, because then I'm not at school. I'm at home. They have to feed me. They have to take care of me. Not to mention I slept till like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And like had gone to bed at like 8 o'clock the night before.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was excessive amount of sleep.
Oh my God. Okay, so what else came up for you what was like a red flag that you were seeing?
A lot of like just the straight up child labor.
Yeah.
And I remember like, because I talked about like my first project was digging that trench, PVC pipe. Moving on after that, it was building the massive play set that was in their front yard for their kids. And I remember literally being in holes up to my chest, having to like dig dirt out.
Oh.
And I remember being in one of those holes, climbing out. And that was like the first time I asked Mark if I could go see my family for Mother's Day. Yeah. And it was like right on my 30-day cusp, because, they're very big on that no contact for 30 days. But of course, since the Holy Spirit told him never to say no, he said that would be okay.
Okay.
But that was like exciting for me, because I was like, I finally am kind of getting away from all this labor, because at that point, I think we had also built them their massive dining room table that they made, and the benches and the seats and everything that went with it. And so walking in, it was just immediate, like, you are labor. Yeah. And so I got used very quickly, especially because I was a bigger guy. Yeah. For so much labor.
So you come in here, and within the first 30 days, all you remember is like labor, 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 labor.
And being drugged.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So immediately starting to put you to work and doing things that benefit them.
Yeah. And very quickly, that image that they try to create of like me and my family coming and having dinner is diminished. Okay. It's like, you are here to serve a purpose, and right now you're being used for labor.
What did you see with other kids too, with how they were treated?
And well, especially looking back now, like how well I was treated compared to other kids. I mean, one of my good friends there, he was constantly told his mother's the devil. He needs to go no contact with her and
cut the umbilical cord.
Yeah,
did they ever say that?
Oh,
they used to say that to us a lot.
I'm sure. And now looking back at it, like I've seen him both with like those people and the Adullam people, and then around his mom. And the only time I've ever seen him smile is around his mom. So it's like, that's what they were trying to keep him away from. But it's because she was kind of trying to pull him out of Adullam, and they wanted to use him for his testimony. Yeah. So he hadn't served his purpose fully yet. And so they were trying to hold on to him for as long as they could. And I felt like that's what they did with a lot of kids. And I remember going in, they told me like, it's a 1-year program, but a lot of our kids stay extra. And from the get-go, in my head, and like even whenever I was talking like with my grandparents about it, I was like, no, after my year's up, I'm going to leave. Because I had it set, like, I'm going to do my time, I'm going to keep my head down, and I'm going to get out. Yeah. And that's kind of what I did. And I think that's a lot of people, they don't look at the quiet guy in the corner. Yeah. So I picked up on a lot more. I was always very observant.
You were able to go without getting as much punishment.
Right. Especially like one thing that was unique with me is I never had to join the dance team.
Really?
And I haven't heard of anyone else getting that treatment.
No, they pressured everybody because that's one of the ways that they made money.
Yeah. I was told from the get-go, like, when you're ready, you'll come. But if you're not meant to, you won't ever ask. But when you're ready, you'll ask.
Interesting.
So I never had to join the dance team.
That's so strange.
I know. And so a lot of times I stayed back, or like I'd go sit in the auxiliary booth and like just watch or something.
Interesting.
But so like having that perspective, I just get to like keep my eyes and ears on everything.
Yeah. Maybe even see some of the ways Mark and Leslie function too. That is really interesting. And I think the whole 1 year thing, I don't know, I guess they must have come up with that after me, of course, but that is a long time.
It is.
You know, inpatient facilities don't even keep kids 1 year unless it's extreme, but they seem to have their eye set on 1 year.
I think it's part of that control. It's like if they can keep you for a year, they can get their talons in.
True.
They can hold on to you and just bleed you for everything that you're worth.
Well, and they can claim you on their taxes, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because and you saying that, like I remember talk of a contract, and so as far as I knew, even though like we've talked about it, like there's no way that we can see that it legally was done.
Yeah.
But like I was told, like, oh, they have legal guardianship over you.
Yeah.
But anytime it came to like a medical issue, it was like, oh, you need to go to your parents.
Yeah. So anytime it wasn't convenient, anytime they had to spend their own money or get us anything that we needed.
And saying that, I remember during my first 30 days, like it was whenever we first moved into Cook's cabin, having a medical episode. Like I don't even know what was going on in my own body. All I know is I couldn't get out of bed, just felt drained, couldn't function. And so they'd come in, try to wake me up, and I just wouldn't move. I'd just lay there, and my heart, like something just felt wrong. And I remember they just left me laying there. And like I think it had started in the main house, and they carried me over to the dorm, and then they left me in the dorm. They had a bonfire that night, and so like hours and hours later, I stumble out of the cabin and like sit at the bonfire for a little bit, and then go back into the cabin. And then later, I'm sat down and I'm told, "Well, you came out of there, so we know you're faking."
Yeah, they did that a lot. I had messed up my ankle one time, and I was doing my best to try to do dancing through it with a freaking brace on, nonetheless. And then I was like, no, I actually don't think this is a good idea. And it's like, well, you're off the dance team. Like they get so upset about, I don't know. They have a weird thing about, I think they just think everybody's lying.
Well, and that was right around the time that Jeremiah kind of came into the picture.
The leaders, right?
Leaders, yeah.
Okay.
He was the one that the whole cat thing happened with.
Yes.
But I remember him pulling me to the side after I got talked to. And he's like, you just have alkaline issues. Drink this bottle of alkaline water and it will make you all better.
Oh my God.
And so I drank this bottle of alkaline water and I was like, I don't think that's going to help, but okay.
So where did they find this guy, Jeremiah? How long was he around?
Oh gosh, he was around for a good while. He was definitely gone whenever I left. So he wasn't there the whole year, but he also kind of was like, just kind of came and went as he pleased because he never lived there. He was definitely like an off-site leader that would show up when they needed someone or just kind of hang around. But I know that he was a disabled veteran, so he didn't work full time. So he could turn around and dedicate all his time to Mark and Leslie and not have to worry about like financial issues. Yeah. Which is like a lot of people had bills to pay. They'd be there and like be these leaders that Mark and Leslie wanted.
Yeah. Sacrificing literally everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember him bringing even like his little brothers around and like them putting me out in the front yard and like in boxing gloves. And they're like, knock his little brother out. Like he needs to be put in his place.
Oh my gosh.
So it's just like awful treatment.
So Jeremiah, well, I know we've talked about him some, not on camera necessarily. And I've mentioned some things that he did in my videos, but what kind of person was this that they had as like an example, a mentor, a leader for you guys?
He was ex-military and very much like his entire life was military. So whether he was in the military or he was out of it, he was going to run his life like it was the military. So he walked around, gun on his hip. He always had like his veteran hat on and it was very just like structured like that.
But real life, it's not military.
No.
But Mark and Leslie loved that idea because it was very controlling.
Yeah, it's someone that can come in and not have to worry about emotions and that he's just this robot that walks around with a gun on his hip.
That's a really good point. That is a really good point because it is somebody who's going to dismiss emotions the way they do. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned the weapons, and I know that you mentioned it in some of the other things you wrote, but the fact that there were dangerous weapons and tools like around all the time.
Oh yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Like especially whenever we're doing these construction projects, we would have power saws, hand saws. I mean, you name the tool and it was there. Mm-hmm. And there's no restricted access to it. Most of the time it's kept in there garage that we built for them. We did like an add-on and built them a little garage.
That's so funny because they turned the garage into a bedroom, and then I guess they had you guys build another garage.
Exactly, yeah. So for a while before it became like a pseudo pantry, we kept all the tools in there, and then eventually the tools got moved to like one of the trailers or something.
Yeah.
And, it was all on Leslie's whim of what she wanted the house to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no restricted access. There was never a lock on the trailer, or the doors to the garage were never locked. Anyone could go in and get these tools. And I mean, something tragic could have happened if someone had been in a like bad mindset.
That's what I was thinking. Is all you need is one person who gets abused to the point where they lose it, and they could have gone in and done something with that.
Yeah.
And you also said that you saw an event happen between their kids, and we were talking about how neglectful they were to their kids. What was that event that you witnessed happening with their kids?
Trigger warning. Disturbing discussion.
It was after we had built Cook's cabin, and me and my buddy we became friends as we stayed there. We're sitting in the cabin, and he's chilling, reading a book. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden he jumps up and just goes, "Shit." And if he cussed, something was wrong. And so I jump up, and we both are just running out the door. I don't even know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And I just see him running towards the playset that we had built for them. And it was a good sized playset. Like it got.
Well, I mean, if you were digging holes up to your chest, I bet it was.
The sports had to be huge.
It's as nice as the house that we built them.
Yeah. I mean, adults could walk under it without bending down. Like it was tall.
Yeah.
And so Jake is running towards it full speed. And I'm standing, I stop on the porch because I don't know what we're looking at. And I just peer out. And their youngest boy is hanging by a handmade noose that their other boy had made.
Oh my God. So he was actually hanging there.
Hanging, like struggling from his neck.
Oh my God.
And Jake, being an ex-cheerleader, just like shimmies up it like a ninja. I mean, it was incredible. And he shoves Eli off and just hits the ground. Oh. The entire time that this is happening, they're sitting in there where the bay windows are watching, because the bay windows looked out on this playset. They're sitting in there watching TV. Their kids are just completely unsupervised. And where they got the rope, we don't know. Probably, from the same spot that they kept all the tools.
And where did they learn that from in this very holy environment where they don't even watch secular movies, supposedly?
Well, there's an excuse for everything. So, we tell them about it and like what we see. Well, someone's brought a spirit. Yeah. And their kids are so receptive to that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so because one of us has brought this spirit, it's making their kids act out, and the spirits are attacking them. And, it's they never address the actual issue.
Yeah.
It's always someone has brought this spirit in, and it's your fault. It's not our fault as parents that we weren't watching our children.
That's wild.
I know.
That's really wild. But they did that a lot. We had spirits, we had issues, we were worldly or whatever, but their kids, they didn't really get in trouble. I mean, if anything, they were neglected, or they received really harsh physical punishment. And then in the meantime, it was our fault that even if they got sick, it's like, you brought in a spirit. That's why we're sick.
Our kids are receptive to this. That's why I have a snivelly nose. Like I've got a little bit of snot. Who's got the spirit?
Yes, they did. That Pigs in the Parlor book, they definitely taught that. Yeah. With people expelling demons from sneezing or whatever. So you saw that, you did a lot of physical labor, and then you said that, I guess, so you didn't necessarily get as much of the like psychological abuse and torture that like some people endured.
Yeah, I didn't. So like I would see it all the time of like they would really go after someone in like this setting. Like we'd have a sit down like random worship night, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, this person's the target.
Yes.
And so it's like everyone kind of groups up and goes after them. And so I remember even like thinking like, oh, the Holy Spirit's telling me this about them, and so I'd say something about it.
Yeah. And so you're all encouraged to participate.
Everyone is encouraged to participate in
very cult-like behavior.
It's horrible. And so then all of a sudden, they're the enemy, and then everyone cries and makes up at the end whenever they're better. But then 30 minutes later, they might not be better.
Yeah.
They might still have the spirit.
That's true. That's true. Now, you did go and minister. I mean, you were there a year. You did go and minister with them several times. And we know that some of the places you went were extremely sketchy. Yeah. Tell me about some of those experiences.
So luckily, I dodged on like what is probably the sketchiest one, which I think they went to Chicago. I dodged on that one. Okay. So that was one of those scenarios where I got to go home for the weekend. And because I was going to be home for the weekend, they were going to be gone. So I got to, have an extra long break at home or whatever.
Yeah.
But the worst one was going to Lamar in the summer.
Lamar, Missouri is what
Lamar,
you're talking
Missouri.
about.
Yeah, not Lamar, Arkansas, Lamar, Missouri. And we're told that we're going to be doing renovations on this church. And so this is where Glenn is living at the time. And, he's still very much their, brass. He's their enforcer,
Yeah.
is the word I'm looking for. And so we're going to go there, and we're supposed to be there for a week. Then we're going to come back home for a week. And then we're going to go to Camp 220 for a week. So we only pack a week's worth of clothes. And we end up staying up there for 2 full weeks. And while they're up there, at the time, I had gotten on melatonin after the
incident.
the first incident. I ended up getting on an actual prescribed dosage of melatonin whenever I was allowed to see my parents again, and they could take me to the doctor. Because, Mark and Leslie are never going to take me to the doctor. They convinced me while we're up there that I don't need my melatonin, and that we're going to pray, and you're going to be better, and then you're going to sleep good. And then I get told by Glenn, and if you don't, and you take your medicine, then I'm going to wake you up with an ice bucket. And he's like, I'm not going to pour just the water. I'm throwing the whole bucket at you. And I was like, oh, okay.
So
now I'm terrified that a 50-gallon bucket, plastic bucket of water is going to be thrown at me, bucket and all, in the morning.
Well, yeah, because they're not going to believe you if you say you didn't, and they believe you did.
Right. In melatonin, it forces you to sleep. It's I don't like it personally. I've since gotten off of it just because of like the side effects, but it forced me to sleep. And a lot of times I would sleep in because I could not physically wake up.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times, like if I took it at the prescribed time, I'd be falling asleep, and we're supposed to be having like worship or a prayer night or something, and I'm over here falling asleep.
Well, because they had us stay up very, very late, if not coming home very, very late. And then we were supposed to get up for Bible study early in the morning.
I mean, you had to be like sitting down ready for Bible study at 6 a.m. So if you plan on showering in the morning, for guys, it's a little bit easier because we can just shower and go, but you still got to be up at, 5:15 at the latest.
And we used to get in trouble for getting up too early to get ready. And then we would be limited on our shower time, and we'd have 7 girls using the bathroom. But that's here nor there.
But I remember in Lamar being like literally packed in like sardines. All the guys slept in a very small, just like interior room. So there was no windows, there was no fresh air. We're just shoved in here. And I mean, we are literally sleeping like shoulder to shoulder with people at our feet, sleeping the opposite direction, like literal sardines. There was no wiggle room in there. You could barely walk to get to your sleeping bag because we didn't have beds.
Right.
We're on the ground on sleeping bags.
Hard ground on sleeping bags.
And so we're doing renovations on this church for what we think is just going to be a week. Ends up getting extended to 2 weeks. I watched one guy that we're told, take these planks and we've got to snap them before they go in the dumpster. And so he's bigger than me, so he's just stepping on them to snap them. Well, one of them snaps, and that wood comes up and just scrapes his leg. I mean, just tears his leg open. And so all of a sudden, we're not doing it how we were told. Why are you wearing shorts in the middle of summer outside when we're having you do this hard labor? You should be wearing pants. We didn't pack any pants.
Like, it's not their fault that they have kids doing jobs. It's our fault because you can't do it right.
Yeah, and why aren't you wearing pants? Well, I have one pair of pants and I have to wear it on Sunday for church. You can't get it stinky. And so then we're there for 2 weeks, and so we end up having to like go to a laundromat and do laundry. But while we're there, we're just getting pulled to all these side projects at the same time that we're, during the day doing renovations on the church. And all of a sudden, this night we're going to go over and do this for these people.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're just getting pulled left and right, just constantly.
So you're literally working like hours and hours throughout the day.
And parts of that church, because it was going under renovation, didn't have AC. And so it is a hot summer. It's 80 plus degrees at least in this building that has no AC in parts of it. Where we shower is like in an unfinished basement, and it's like very like you're going to get killed down here vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just terrifying. And, this is where you have to go to shower in the morning.
Yeah.
And so they kind of take you down there like cattle, and then you come back up and eat breakfast. And the big thing while we were there was corporal punishment. So we've talked about like people having to do literally thousands of push-ups. We calculated that at one time, because each time that we had to do push-ups, it would be more. So it's like, the first time something happens, it's 10 push-ups, 20, and it eventually gets to 100. So then just every time after that, it's 100. And it's anytime one person messes up in the slightest thing, and Glenn would intentionally make us mess up. So like say we eat dinner, we're cleaning up after dinner, we're sweeping, we're mopping, everything. He would walk around when no one's paying attention and take like a small piece of bread or something and toss it on the floor. And then he'd go sit back down and he'd just wait. And if no one finds that piece of bread on the floor that you've already cleaned, that you think is done, 100 push-ups. And so that corporal punishment, even after we left that 2 weeks, was something that they carried on for a while of making us do these push-ups in 100 intervals. And so we calculated it whenever we finally left. In just that 2 week span alone, we've done thousands.
Where are Mark and Leslie at?
During all of this, they were staying off-site, I think at like the pastor's house of the church. And so we never saw them. Just occasionally they'd stop by. I remember one night we're cleaning up dinner and they show up at the doors and we're like, oh, it's Mark, it's Leslie. We're excited because, for us, that's our people. These are our leaders. We look up to them. And we're so excited. And they're like, everyone to your rooms now. And so we all...
To your one room?
our one room. And the girls had a separate one room.
Were the girls staying at the church too?
Yeah. So everyone was staying at the church.
Oh, I thought it was just the boys.
No, the girls are there too. Boys are packed in the sardine room. The girls have like this massive room. They've got a little bit more room, but I think they were like told to stay on like the outskirts of the room for like sleeping. But so we all go up to our room and it's sitting like right above where we ate. So we can hear everything that's happening. And they kept one of the leaders down there. And from that point until like 2:30, we can just hear her screaming and they're praying and casting this spirit out of her and for hours. And then they just never said anything about it. Me as a student there never knew what was going on. I was never kept in the loop on that. All I know is that for hours and hours, keeping me up at night is this leader screaming bloody murder all night long.
Yeah. Talking about Leslie, right? Or
No. The leader they were praying over.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was Mark, Leslie, Glenn, and Glenn's wife, Rhonda. And they were all praying over this one female leader that was like one of the live-in leaders at Adullam.
Yeah.
And so they prayed for her until like middle of the night.
Wow. So literally, I mean, what that is one of their tactics is like keeping us in a prayer session or in worship or, and they did this more after I left, but people being privately with them in these forced sessions of prayer or sozos they did, I know, after I left and things like that for hours and hours. And so in some cases, convincing people to say things that happened to them that didn't actually happen to them.
Yeah. And that was, again, one of those things that I never had to experience. I was always on the outside. I always saw it happening to other people, but the Holy Spirit never led them to do that to me.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that you felt like were a final straw for you?
I mean, it was hard because I tried to stay connected whenever I did eventually leave. And like, I even was, giving them offerings. I was like, you're my church. I want to give you my tithe.
So you were a minor giving offerings.
Yes.
And they encouraged other people to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And other people would buy groceries for them, kids and young adults.
Well, and one reason that I was given such like a loose leash compared to everyone else is because they wanted my parents. My parents owned a business. My parents would donate money. I mean, they would write them checks. My parents at the time had a Yukon and they would show up with that Yukon packed full of food to give to them because they were always talking about, oh, we don't have enough to feed the kids. Summer's a really hard time. The school year's a really hard time. Every time's a really hard time. And so my parents would show up, they'd go to Walmart and they'd spend hundreds of dollars on groceries and they're buying like name brand stuff, like good stuff. And they're buying like Little Debbie's and they're like, let the kids have a treat and this stuff. And a lot of that stuff we never saw.
What happened with that?
It gets set at the side. It's for the dollars. So that, this is for the dollars.
So the dollars would rifle through their groceries and take aside the things that they liked or they wanted. And that was specially for them.
Yep.
And I know when I was there, like whenever we lived in the house, it was, at first we were kind of allowed to go get food, but then it became to where we were monitored every time we opened the cabinet. Yeah.
So we definitely were not allowed to. And so I've talked about like me being a bigger guy, and a lot of times they cook stuff that I just did not like to eat.
Well, most of it, what we actually ate, the teenagers that were living there, was like pizza and spaghetti and stuff that was really fatty and not good for us and processed.
For years, up until like just this year, I could not eat spaghetti. I refused. It was like a trauma food. I refused to touch it because of how often we ate it. Or they made like the noodle salad and I wouldn't touch it because it had like olives and stuff in it. And I was like, I don't like that.
The pasta salad.
Yes. So I wouldn't touch it. So I'd eat leftover spaghetti, constantly eating that. But my dad was always gracious. And anytime I'd go home for the weekend, before he'd take me back, he'd go, do you need anything? Let's go to Walmart. Let's go pick out some stuff. I'm trying to keep my head down. And so I'd like pick out a couple things I wanted. And so I'd have like my own little food stash whenever I went back. And there were a couple times that I got in trouble for eating that food. Or I'd be like, I don't really like what we're having for dinner. I think I'm just going to wait until we go back to our dorms and I'll eat a Pop-Tart or something. I get in trouble. They're like, why aren't you eating our food that we're making for you?
How dare you keep snacks like we do?
Yeah. And so it was a big thing with mainly Leslie was like her big thing is like, I can keep food for me and my family, but you can't do that.
Oh yeah, there was so many double standards.
Oh, absolutely, especially between Mark and Leslie. Like especially with the guys like airsoft guns and video games that Mark would like give us. Leslie would turn around and like sometimes it's the same day, turn around and be like, "How dare you?" Like I remember me and my buddy getting in trouble because after we had done all of our chores, we'd done dinner, there was nothing else going on that night. We asked Mark, "Is it cool if we go next door and play some video games for a little bit?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." We're over there maybe 15 minutes. He comes storming in and takes the controllers and like unplugs something and like storms out and she's screaming the whole time about it and just leaves. Me and my buddy sat there and he's like, "I've got another cord over there." And it was like, she doesn't even know what she's taking. She just knows that we're not over there and we're kind of doing our own thing. So she's mad about it.
Yeah. Well, she would get mad at people for reading a book. The only thing you were allowed to do was chores, cleaning, one of their projects, or Bible study or dance team.
And sometimes you even got in trouble for that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, anything you did, we were walking on eggshells.
There was no line that you could walk where you were safe.
Yeah. Not even naps. You couldn't take a nap. Nothing like that.
No, that was a spirit.
Oh, yeah. Spirit of slothfulness, laziness. No, I had been up, slept 6 hours after you had us minister for 2 days. So like to sleep a little more.
Yeah, well, and that double standard comes into play, like spirit of gluttony. Like girls would get in trouble for wanting seconds on food. Meanwhile, I'm allowed to have my own snacks in the dorm, and literally no one else is.
Yeah,
no one else is given that privilege.
They monitored what people ate, how they looked, how they dressed, like commenting on. I know especially Leslie was very aware of if somebody was gaining weight.
She was quick to let them know.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And I think that was probably when I was at my thinnest. It was while I was there because a lot of times I would skip those meals or we're eating like carb heavy meals that just don't have any nutritional value.
Right. And I've said it in one of my videos before. A lot of us were at our thinnest when we were there because of that.
If I'd been on the dance team, I probably would have been thinner.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that you have mentioned to me before that you had the desire to leave before the 1 year mark was up. Tell me what happened whenever you expressed that desire.
And it wasn't even like that much sooner than the 1 year mark. I mean, it was like maybe a month or so before, but it was like a natural end, like the school year was ending or something. So I was like, this would just be a really good time for me to kind of step out. And they're like, no, we really need you to stay that full year. Like you're in a full 1 year contract. You got to stay that 365 days. And so it was just, that was one of the times I was told no. It's like, well, we need you to stay because they want that connection.
Yeah.
They want my parents to keep giving them money and keep bringing them groceries.
Yeah.
And so they even like tried encouraging me to stay longer. And I mean, like I had said from the beginning, I had my mind made up. I'm not staying longer than a year.
Yeah.
At that point, even with their like claws dug in, I was like, no, I'll hang around and stuff, but like, I don't want to live here anymore.
Is there anything else just in particular that you witnessed or that happened that you want to share?
I think one of the biggest events for me, and this was like, it was towards my end, and this was like, they really don't care about us. Is like, I still have a scar on my hand. I got shot point blank. One of the other guys was messing around with an airsoft gun, which we commonly had. Mark was constantly giving them back to them. Leslie would take them away. He'd sneak them back to us. Boys were encouraged to do prank wars against the girls, but the girls couldn't retaliate. I mean, girls got hit in the chest, in the leg. I mean, everywhere with BBs.
Oh my God.
It was horrible. And so he's waving around this airsoft gun and I'm joking around. My older siblings are in law enforcement. And so like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to come like take it away from you. And so I do like a disarm technique. In process of doing that, he gets his other hand and reinforces his grip. And so I'm like, well, I've got to get my second hand up there, but there's not enough room. So I slide this hand over the barrel, put this hand up there, and I start twisting. He thinks the safety's on. I think the safety's on. It's not on. And it's a fresh CO2 tank. And so that first shot coming out is brutal. And so the way that I twist it, I literally force him to pull the trigger into my hand. So totally not his fault. It's just us messing around.
But y'all shouldn't have just had those.
No kids should have these airsoft guns that are putting holes in people. And it's not the first time that it's happened. And we keep getting them back.
Yeah.
And so I get that BB immediately just shot into my hand. And blood just starts dripping. And you see the blood dripping before you feel anything.
Yeah.
And so then I run to the sink and everyone's getting ready for bed. I think Sean was in the bathroom at the time. And so like he's brushing his teeth and I'm running in with a bloody hand,
oh God.
Getting in the sink and I'm dripping. And then guy that wanted to be a medical student comes in and he's like, well, I can take it out for you. I'm like, no, no one else needs to touch it. And so he's like telling me what to do, like wash it out, keep the water on it, let's put some pressure on it. One of the guys goes and gets Mark. Takes Mark 10, 15 minutes to get over there, which is an absurd amount of time because the buildings are right next to each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what's going on? Like, someone go check. So someone went out, came back. He was on the phone with his lawyer.
Oh my God.
He was making sure that he couldn't get sued. And so then he comes in and he calls another student whose dad is a doctor and is trying to see if he'll come and remove it at home so that they don't have to go to the doctor, because he doesn't want to tell my parents yet.
So he obviously knew that you guys should not have had access to these.
Absolutely. And so he's trying to get this doctor to come. Well, this doctor's out of state. Can't come. And so finally, the third phone call he makes after calling a lawyer and a doctor that he was going to have do this procedure without any proper, sterilization, or in a medical facility, he was just going to have him come down with some pliers and take it out or whatever. Finally calls my parents. And it's 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so my mom is talking to me, and she's a nurse, so she's asking about it, and I'm telling her, and she's like, okay. She's like, can you make it to the morning? Because we don't have insurance. If we go tonight, we're going to have to go to the emergency room, and it's super expensive. So can you wait till the morning? And I'm like, it really hurts. She's like, I know it does. She's like, I'm not asking, if it hurts or not, can you make it? And so I was like, I think I can make it. So we wrap it up best we can. I'm allowed to skip Bible study the next morning. Graciously.
So blessed.
And so I'm like trying to take a shower with this hand wrapped up, holding it out of the way. I barely slept because it just hurts so bad. Changed the bandage on it. Finally, after a couple hours in the morning, my mom comes and gets me, takes me to a medical facility, and they're able to remove it. And the doctor remarks, she's like, this really hamburgered your hand. Your hand looks like minced meat in there. And so I slept all night with that. And it was horrible. And so I come back and Mark's like, I got a surprise for you. I'm like, oh? He's like, I let them hook the Xbox back up in the boys' dorm.
Oh my God.
That was my reward for getting shot, and toughing it out till the next morning was, I was allowed to, couldn't even play because my hand, I'm allowed to watch and try my best to do something.
Yeah. I remember whenever I hurt my ankle, it was a horrid injury. I don't think I broke it, but at the time I didn't know, but it clearly had done some. It was so double the size, black and blue. I was sleeping on the floor with it raised, just suffering all night, half asleep, staying awake.
Yeah.
I remember scooting to the top of their stairs because I couldn't walk and being like, hey, I think something's wrong, because that was when I was dancing whenever it happened, and they encourage you to be so crazy that I would be all wild, and then I fucked my ankle up.
And something happened, dance through it. Keep going. Don't
I
let
couldn't.
it stop.
It was to the point, it was so bad. I could barely walk. But they were upset with me. There was a huge inconvenience that had happened, and they didn't look at it and go, oh yeah, that's pretty bad. They didn't tell me, okay, let's get you help. They were just like, well, okay.
Yeah.
And so my parents also took me. And when the doctor saw it, he was like, he just said to the nurse, you seen that ankle? They were amazed it wasn't broken.
Jeez.
But they don't.
No, they don't. They don't take care of the kids when they're there.
Yeah. No dental visits, no regular checkups. When you're sick, obviously it's demonic. So why would you get help? Mental health? No. Obviously everybody knows whenever I told them I was going to hurt myself, didn't do anything about that. And it wasn't even until I was retelling the story that I go, they didn't even tell my parents. What the hell?
Yeah. I'm sure that there's, besides that, I hurt my ankle once. Bigger guy, I rolled my ankles all the time, especially whenever we're doing hard labor in Lamar, Missouri, renovating this church. And we pray over it. Oh, you're walking a little bit better today. You're accepted.
Yeah. It's really scary. Even people who left way later than us, it's scary how much they pushed healing on people. One girl after a car accident. I mean, it's dangerous.
Yeah, and they would encourage us to go out to public places like Walmart and pester these people. It's if you see someone walking with the cast, stop and pray for them.
Yes, or at school.
Yes,
yeah.
I remember I was never brave enough to do it at school, but out in public, whenever it's I'm with my mentor, and so he's like, I want you to go do it.
Yeah.
And so I'd ask him, and they'd be like, oh no thanks. And so I just turn around, and so then he'd step in. And there's one guy that was literally walking with crutches and a cast, and he's not full on holding his leg up, he's putting some pressure on it, but he's very much walking with these crutches. And so my mentor's like, can we pray for you? He's like, no, man, no, I'm good. He's like, healing's right there. You just got to accept it. He's like, no, really, I'm okay. And he's like, well, we're going to pray for you as you walk away then. And so like we say this quick little prayer or whatever. And so the guy is like leaving Walmart at this point. He's like, I want nothing to do with this.
Oh my God.
And so then after we pray, we're standing there and he's like, I can tell he's starting to walk better.
Yeah. Okay.
So whatever.
Yeah.
And so they had me so convinced that there was one weekend I literally went home, went to church with my parents to their church and prayed for the pastor's legs to grow. So embarrassing.
Yeah.
And he just like looks down at me and he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I learned this at my...
Yeah. Well, they really did put some weird things into our head, and they still believe some of those weird things. Well, okay, so I guess for you, it was more of you reached your end of your time. And of course, it's not like you just loved being there. So you just knew that you were ready to leave. Do you think that there was a time whenever you flipped from, oh, this is like not a good place?
I think it was like a gradual slide of like, at first I'm like uncomfortable because I'm like, whoa, I'm just immediately being used to labor and I'm watching these videos of this terrible person to like sliding into like more comfort in it. And it's like, oh, well, this is God's purpose. This is what they've told us. And my parents are so happy with the results they're getting. And if I don't produce these results, I'm going to have to come back after my year, which is what I really don't want.
So you've probably felt a need to play a part too.
And the more I played that part, I think the more I believed it.
Yeah.
And so I start buying in more and more into their stuff, even whenever...
Trigger warnings, disturbing animal cruelty.
These horrible events are going on around me.
Yeah.
Like talking about Jeremiah and him tying the noose with the cat and like bringing the boys out. And he's like, it just won't die. Let me pull out my gun now and shoot it. And he shoots several rounds into it. And you're doing that in front of children.
I just don't understand. So did that get brought up to Mark and Leslie? Surely somebody brought it to them.
Someone would have had to have said something, especially with the way that it happened. And there was one girl there that was very like, she loved animals. And this was her cat. She was the one that she's like, I noticed this cat's acting funny. It's not right. Yeah. So they took it to the vet and they're like, well, it has the equivalent of cat AIDS is what we were told. Whether or not that's true, we have no clue. But they're like, it just has to be put down. And so they send
They could have paid for it to be put down.
But instead they send Jeremiah, their robot military guy, to do it. And so without anyone present, he ties this noose around a tree, tries to hang the cat. Well, it's struggling for its life. And I guess he just thinks it's funny. So he comes and gets a bunch of us guys and brings us over there and makes us watch this cat struggle before he finally pulls out his gun and shoots 4 or 5 times at it before it finally stops moving. And you're making kids watch this. I can't even remember that. Like, I know that event happened. I can't reimagine that event because it is, as a kid, that's something you should never see.
Yeah. And that if he's displaying that kind of behavior, what else is he doing?
It still haunts me.
Yeah.
Because I have 3 dogs. I could never imagine doing that to my animals.
No. And the fact that Mark and Leslie would not, like, that should have been a huge deal to them. That should have been something that was made into a big deal. But instead, they're so focused on whether or not someone's being a Jezebel.
Yeah.
That they are okay with people who are going to torture animals, taking care of your kids and being around these kids and mentoring these kids. That's just a testament to the kind of people that they had around. That's just one example of what you did see.
Yeah.
What about things that people didn't see?
Exactly. We don't, as many of us as there are, we still don't know the stuff that happened behind closed doors that people that haven't come out and talked about happened, or like the people that still buy into their stuff. Like, what did they see? Those people that were privy to like the most exclusive things, like what was going on in their head. Yeah. There's still so much we don't know.
It's so true. Okay, so whenever you left, you said that you kind of stayed in contact with them for a short time. Mm-hmm. How did you end up finally like losing that contact?
So I was supposed to still be like meeting with my mentor. Mm-hmm. And so towards the end of my time there, I'm still playing the part that they want so that I don't go back. I'm still, producing the results that my parents want to see so that I don't go back. But at the same time, I still have my escape in debate. And so I get a girlfriend. Mm. But, that's one of those things the Holy Spirit never told them about, that I had this secret girlfriend. And, being the quiet observer, I knew I was telling them earlier, like I literally knew where everyone's first period class was.
Mhm.
Like I'd just listen or like ask a nonchalant question, like figure it out. So I knew me and her could walk downstairs in this one area of the science lab, and no one would ever see us from Adullam because everyone else's classes were everywhere else. So we'd sit down there, and so that was part of my reason for like not wanting to stay. Is like, well, I want to get to spend time with her and develop this relationship.
You wanted to be a normal teenager?
I know, it's wild.
What is wrong with you?
And so that's part of the reason that I didn't want to stay. Is like I wanted to live my life. I wanted to go back to my friends because thankfully my friends were so patient, and they're the same friends I've had since kindergarten, first grade, and they hung around while I was going through that for a year and just waited for me.
Yeah.
But it's so hard how they just separate you from your entire reality.
Yeah.
So whenever I finally get out, I'm like, well, I'm supposed to be meeting with my mentor, and this is my connection, and every once in a while I'll show up, and I might show up for a Bible study in the morning, surprise them, or I might show up one night that I know they're having worship night. Then Mark is like, well, you can stay for the leadership meeting. So I'm never officially leader, but I get to sit in on like 1 or 2 leadership meetings. And at that point, they were just boring.
Yeah.
I'd heard stories about like, oh, leadership meetings where the fun stuff happens. At that point, it was nothing.
Yeah. Well, it only felt fun because they were so neglected of everything else. That was like the little bit more privilege they had to either eat a little bit more or go out to Waffle House. Is what they used to do whenever we lived there. Just little bits that felt like rewards.
I already got my freedom, so it's like, what more can you really offer me?
Yeah.
But so then my mentor stops meeting, and so, that falls through. And so then I message Mark, and I'm like, hey, I still want to stay connected with you guys. You guys are like a family to me. At the same time, I'm having this secret relationship that I'm not telling them about. My mom knows about, but I refuse to bring it up with, my mentor. Mark's like, well, I'll meet with you. And then he cancels the next week. And then the next week, something else happens. And then, I never met with him, even though for weeks and weeks and weeks, he was like, well, we're going to meet.
Yeah.
I'm going to set aside this time.
Yeah.
Something always happened that took higher importance.
Yeah.
And so eventually that connection I had just is so strained, it just snaps. And I just stopped showing up.
Yeah.
Stopped going around. And I remember like even going to banquets after I'd already left, and like I'm still not going out there anymore, but it's like my parents bought banquet tickets and they want me to go.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I regret it, and I feel so bad. And luckily I'm still friends with these people, but I dragged 2 friends to one of their banquets, and they put this girl up on stage who starts just, screaming out and crying like they prayed the gay away. I'm healed, and homosexuality is a sin, and you're going to burn in hell forever. And one of my friends is bisexual.
Oh, no.
And so he gets up and walks out.
Good for him.
Absolutely good for him. Love him to death. My other friend sees him leaving, and he's like, I'm going to go check on him, make sure he's all right. So he gets up and walks out. So I stayed for a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden I'm sitting at this table, and I'm so isolated. And I feel like that's kind of when it hits me, like,
okay,
being with them is going to drive me away from everything. And so I get up and I walk out.
Yeah.
And we just get in our car and leave.
Wow. What'd your parents think about that?
I don't think I told them that we left early.
Oh, really?
Because they were supposed to be there. I was supposed to go with them. I was supposed to go with them and my grandparents, and everyone ended up getting sick.
Okay.
And so my parents were like, well, we already bought the tickets. Can you just go?
Yeah.
And so that's why I drug them along, and then we just ended up leaving.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you make of all this when you look back now?
I hate how easy I had it, honestly.
Yeah.
I hate that privilege that they gave me, but I also hate how they treated everyone.
Yeah.
And now I have, such a heart for caring for people and especially kids, because everything that they're doing is just hurting people.
Yeah.
It's none of it is helpful. Anyone that disconnects from them has such, stories of such terrible experiences and how hard it is and all this trauma that they put them through.
Yeah.
Like they would create this trauma and then convince them that it was from something else.
Yeah.
Like one girl's mom died while she was there.
Yeah.
And they convinced her it was for the better.
Wow.
I mean, it is stuff like that is going on there, that if you can just take a step back and go, just because they say that they associate with God doesn't mean that they're godly, and look at it from an objective perspective.
Yeah.
It is horrible and it is abuse.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to get over that fear of seeing them in public walking across the JCPenney's crosswalk.
Yeah.
To be like able to They're like, no, these people are horrible people.
Yeah.
And now I hate everything that they stand for, and I want to do everything I can to empower the people that they hurt.
Yeah. I think a lot of us felt that relief when they left the state, that we don't have to worry about running into them anymore.
I think I did, and at the same time, I hate that they left.
Yeah.
Because at least, when they were here, part of me was living rent free in their heads.
Yeah.
Because they know that, we're out here with this
Yeah.
little group and that we're telling people our stories.
Right. Well,
and so then they kind of worry about us because we're all in the same city.
Well, that's probably one of the reasons that they left when they did.
Absolutely.
Well, someone else
Absolutely.
made that survivors group and then we were all in it.
Yeah.
I'm
And,
sure.
everything that we were talking about, someone was telling them about.
Yeah.
So they knew everything that was going on. And then all of a sudden they want to leave and sell their house.
Well, and they had been to so many churches and made such a name for themselves in the town. There were a small amount of people who did kind of say, hey, these people are culty. Hey, these people are kind of weird. Or, hey, my kid had a bad experience there. There was a small hubbub that was beginning to circulate about them. So then that, paired with the fact that they were wanting so bad to be in the ramp and that their kids were now getting them ties, and our survivors group comes up, of course, God's telling them.
Yeah, God's telling us this is perfect timing to leave.
Yeah, I bet it is. Someone's telling you.
Yeah.
What do you wish people understood about what you went through, what others went through, or about cults? Like, what do you just wish people would get about this kind of situation?
I think part of it is like kind of what I said before, is like, just because they say like, oh, we're praising Jesus, we're praising God, doesn't mean that everything they are doing is correct, or that anything that they're doing is correct, or that we should just turn a blind eye to it. And I hate people like on Facebook whenever we post our videos and they're like, they're such nice people and they would never do that. They're of God. If Jesus were here, he would point at them and be like, get out.
Well, like, what you do to the least of these is what you do to me.
It's like, we can point to, if we want to play the scripture game, we can point to the scripture that says like, these are not the people that Jesus would have kept around. Like, the disciples were criminals and murderers and, whatever, if you believe that. But these are not the people they kept around. Right.
Well, and the majority of the kids that they helped did not come out with a good experience.
No. I mean, it is very, very few that will say like, oh, my time there was great. Yeah. They're good people. They're doing good things.
Yes.
Most of the people won't talk about them, or they're, talking to us and they're like, my experience there was terrible.
Yeah.
And everything you guys are doing is, laying the groundwork for the rest of us.
Right.
And like, I'm literally sitting here shaking, telling my story because it's hard, but I know that maybe me telling my story will empower someone else to tell theirs.
Exactly.
And I think the more we get out about what really went on there is just going to help the survivors.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, so the leader that they kept around after he abused someone is a horrible, disgusting person.
And that was someone really close to Mark, right?
Yeah. He was on the board.
Yes.
I mean, he was, and we were talking about this earlier because we were like, Mark's not a smart person. Like, how would he have figured this stuff out? And I was like, that person.
Really? So he was like an intel for him?
I think he was such a resource, because it's like, all of a sudden, whenever he starts getting involved, that's when their taxes kind of get funky, and all of a sudden, their income drops as far as like what they're recording, and like money starts getting shifted different ways whenever this man enters the picture.
Which he started being on their board. We're just going to call him R. So he started being on their board around 2018, and he was there till 2021. The assault definitely happened before 2021, and they knew about it. They were also warned by that person's, someone very close to him. And then after they were warned about him, they were gifted a cruise. So he was giving them money. He was obviously influencing how they did their taxes. He also got put on the board after another member left because they wouldn't let that member see their taxes.
Yep.
So a lot of sketchy stuff with that person they were really close with.
Absolutely. This is the same man that while I was at Adullam, we start working for him, like stuffing envelopes.
Oh yeah, doing free labor for his actual business.
For his actual business. And then like sometimes the guys are going in and doing like little projects here and there and like running machinery that we have no business running. But it's all for his business and sending out these envelopes, whatever. And so I go home one weekend, I'm like, oh yeah, we're helping R. And I get told, be careful around him. By my parents. They're like, be careful around him. They're like, don't say anything to Mark and Leslie, but your uncle did some landscape work for him. And at this point, I've been to R's house. I have seen the landscape work they're talking about. It's like a private creek running through his backyard. I mean, it's thousands of dollars of work. And they're like, there was a loophole in the contract that he exploited, and he has never paid your uncle for it.
Wow.
And so that's whenever we were talking about it, that we were like drawing those connections, and we're like, that's probably like where Mark got his financial advice. And that's why money starts disappearing and it's harder to follow.
Yeah.
It's because of that. But that's also the same guy that we spent part of that same summer that we went to Lamar, Missouri. The other part of it was us guys going down and moving an entire furniture warehouse worth of furniture 4 or 5 times. It was an absurd amount, because we get down there, he's not there. Mark's like, all right, this is what he wants done. You guys start working on it. He's going to be putting you guys up in this hotel. I've got to get back. He leaves us.
Wow.
And so we start moving this furniture. And we got fed like pizza from an actual pizzeria. Like, it's not like, we
Not
feel
frozen pizza from Walmart.
or like Little Caesars $5 hot and ready.
Yeah.
We're feeling great because we got like this actual good pizza, and like we got asked like, what do you want? What kind of pizza do you want? And so that's what we got. And so it's like, all right, we're actually getting some stuff. And the entire time we're being told, you boys will be paid for this labor.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved that entire furniture warehouse, start getting it set up. Well, then he finally shows up, and ours like, this is not how I want it set up. I want it done a different way. So we got to move everything again.
Oh my God.
So we move everything again. So then he auctions part of it off. And anytime anything's sold, we have to load it onto the vehicles, get it out of there. Then he's going to have another auction the next day. So we have to reset it all up. Because, now there's gaps where people have bought stuff. And so we got to reset it all up, do it all over again the next day. And I think we did a total of like 3 auctions that happened. And then he has a storefront here in Russellville. And he's like, well, I want to move all of the furniture that we have left to this storefront. I'm going to try to sell it there. Having to reset it up again. So we moved this furniture all these different times for him, and we never saw a penny.
Yeah.
And Sean had even made the comment while we were talking earlier. He's like, I remember talking to Mark, and Mark was like, well, I want the guys to go out and like do this. And Sean advocated for us, and he was like, Mark, they were wiped out from having to move all this furniture. And Mark was like, okay, maybe we let them rest. At least they're getting paid for it. And we never saw a penny.
Well, what I heard supposedly from somebody who knew R was that he supposedly paid Mark for you guys.
Oh, I guarantee that money was paid, but it never made it to us.
Right.
And so all this labor that we did, and the entire time we're doing it, and we want to do it right because we think we're getting paid, we're never going to see a drop of it.
That's awesome.
But I'm sure it's going to be one of those situations where he has so much money, charges will never see the light of day.
It's true. I think in small towns, even in Russellville, especially in places like Russellville, there's corruption.
Oh yeah, and money talks.
Yeah, money controls.
I think that's how they got away with so much.
Yeah,
is just the connections that they have and everything that they could exploit.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking about your experience. And if you ever think of anything else in the future, I'm sure that we will have other roundtable discussions. And I know that there are other things in the works too. So if anything comes up, you can let me know. But thank you for your bravery and for being vulnerable and sharing your story. Abuse being exposed and people finding their voice and taking back their narrative.
Yeah, and there's so much like even like trying to recount my own story or like hearing other people talk about so much you forget about because so much of it is just rooted in trauma and we just bury it.
Yeah, we do. And it's weird how certain things will stick out to certain people. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And this has been great, so we really appreciate it.
I'm happy.
What do you enjoy doing in your spare time when you're not plagued by trauma from Mark and Leslie?